A leak regarding the Star Trek Nickelodeon show. We get our first look at the animated short treks and some new information regarding the IDW Picard comic tie-ins. Let's pour it up! Okay, so the first story that we're going to go ahead and talk about today are the two animated short treks that we got just a little tease about at the end of the most recent short trek, Ask Not, featuring Captain Pike. And these short treks, one is called Ephraim and Dot, and the other one is The Girl Who Made the Stars. And The Girl Who Made the Stars, I believe, is connected back to that intro speech that Michael Burnham did kind of at the beginning of Season 2 of Discovery. And then Ephraim and Dot is, of course, connected back to the tardigrade known as Ripper and one of the Dot 7 droids that were used to repair the Enterprise. That is kind of a new thing that was added into the Enterprise, into the Star Trek kind of mythos, I guess, towards the end of Star Trek Discovery Season 2. But let's talk a little bit about that. Number one, I think the animation for both of these shorts look awesome. I'm very excited about it. I'm kind of a 2D, artist kind of style traditionalist in a lot of regards, but I am excited to see that this is the direction that they're going with these particular shorts, and I'm excited to see how, I guess, whimsical and cutesy the shorts are going to be. I'm kind of excited to see this kind of new side to Star Trek. The animated series before was kind of played very straight edge, as straight edge as it could be for an animated show, but this one seems to be taking a little bit more of an artistic style to it and kind of giving it a little bit more of a cartoonish flair, which is great in my opinion, because again, that's not something that we've really dealt with too much before inside of Star Trek. So I'm excited by that fact. I'm excited to see how that kind of, over time kind of plays out within the franchise and stuff like that. And I think it's also going to serve as a good testing bed for how the overall, Trekkie audience is going to feel in regards to the idea of animation within the franchise again. And I hope that the reception is good. Number one, I hope the shows are good, but I hope that the reception is good within the Trek community so that we can continue to get more animated style things within Star Trek. Because animation can tell some really good and powerful stories. I think it used to be maybe given kind of a bad rap. I guess maybe there was like a weird time there, but animation, in my opinion, can tell some really great stories. So I'm excited that they're using this new medium, and I can't wait to see what these particular stories are about. Speaking of these stories, though, we do know a little bit from the Ephraim and Dot one that obviously the Dot 7 is one of these repair droids, but the tardigrade supposedly is the same tardigrade that we saw inside of Star Trek Discovery Season 1 that was entitled Ripper. But the name Ephraim is the name that Brian Fuller was originally going to give the tardigrade crew member that was supposed to be on the Discovery. This was before Brian Fuller left the production and was, supposedly fired or walked out, or however you guys want to look at that, depending on, the story that you want to read is different stories there. But before he departed the production, there was a tardigrade, a full-blown tardigrade crew member that was, I don't know how it talked to people. I don't know if it was as big as the one that we saw in the show, or if it was like a human with a tardigrade head, or I don't know what it was that they were trying to do there, but so this is definitely connected back to that name. I don't know if it's going to be playing up a story that maybe Brian Fuller was going to be telling originally, or if they're just trying to pay homage to some ideas that the Discovery team had, back during the pre-production of Season 1. So either way, I just wanted to throw that little nugget out there for you. So the next story I want to talk about is a story about John Eaves, one of the famous illustrators and artists attached to various Star Trek productions, and it was actually a screen grab of his main website, like his personal website that had his resumes and abouts, and it was sent to me by TrekSphere. Ironically, the organization I'm sponsored with sent this to me, and they said, hey, take a look at this, because on the front of it there it said Star Trek Prodigy, Nickelodeon. And obviously, for those of you guys who have been keeping up with the news, we know that Alex Kurtzman and company have a name for the Nickelodeon show, but they have been so far quiet about giving that information out to the fans. And right around the time where somebody started to poke around and people started asking John Eaves, like, hey, is this the actual name of the show? He then quickly edited the, little blurb there underneath his resume section to drop the whole Nickelodeon and Prodigy portion, and just now it says Star Trek Production. So I would say the fact that they've been so coy about the title, and B, the fact that it literally said Prodigy and Nickelodeon on there, and then C, the fact that once people noticed it, he immediately took it down. I'd say it's a fair bet that that's probably the name of the show. I think the Nickelodeon show is probably going to be called Star Trek Prodigy, and that could relations to the characters. We know that the kind of brief synopsis that we got about that show was that it was going to be a band of misfit kids that find an old derelict Starfleet ship, and then they use that to go on on an adventure or something of, like that, or at least that's what the original pitch was. It could be completely different by the time we see the show because it's going to be far off for that one. But that could be either, the Prodigy could either be one of the characters or Prodigy could even be the name of the ship. We don't know anything about that right now. The only thing that we do know is that was on the website and now it's gone, and also that CBS did in fact trademark Star Trek Prodigy way back in May of this year. So clearly they were anticipating the use of Star Trek Prodigy, but it could also be nothing because there are a lot of other names that CBS, I've covered that before, that CBS kind of, trademarks so that in case they want to use it, they may not. But there's a lot of names in there, so we're just kind of connecting a couple of dots here. But I would say it's fairly obvious based off of the John Eaves post and the trademarking piece that the Nickelodeon show is going to be titled Star Trek Prodigy. So the final story that we're going to talk about is the Star Trek Picard Countdown comic coming from IDW Publishing. They have been rather coy about, what the specific release dates were, but now we've got something more solid for one of them at least, and then possibly some kind of guesstimates later on. The first one, though, is going to be coming out this November. At the end of this month, we're going to be getting the very first issue of Star Trek Picard Countdown, which is great. And we also know, according to their website, that the third issue will be coming out sometime in January. So I think it's safe to say that the second issue will probably be coming out sometime in December. So for those of you who are huge comic fans or those who are trying to keep up to date with what is going on with Star Trek Picard, those are obviously going to be some things that you're going to want to pick up. So again, we have one in November, probably December, and then again in January, leading right up into the, the premiere, of Star Trek Picard. The big question that I know that a lot of you probably would have is this going to be considered canon? And as far as I can tell, the answer is yes, which is a little bit of a departure from the normal process, with the written word for Star Trek, where all of those things are usually considered beta canon. But as far as we know right now, it will be considered alpha canon. So whatever's happening in those comic books and the Picard tie-in novel will be considered to be canon until we, I guess, get an official word or until obviously something contradicts it on screen. But that is the word we're using right now, is that it will be canon. So again, if you want to keep up to date with what's going on with Picard prior to its, release, then that's what you're going to have to start picking up there. I know I'll be getting my copy because I am just super excited to see what is going on and what this whole rescue armada was and what led to Picard leaving the Federation. And all that's going to be kind of explored in these Countdown comics and in the book. So I personally am going to get them. But, I don't know if it's going to be required reading for the show. Hopefully it won't be, because that would be kind of dumb. But I think it'll just kind of expand the narrative overall for the show. All right, let's go ahead and drop right into the rumor rundown. Okay, so the big rumor this week actually comes from a backstabbing, grifting YouTuber, also known as Ketwolski. Yes, that's right. I didn't say that I started a rumor, but I definitely had kind of a negative reaction. Some of you guys may have seen the video that I've now privatized in regards to a official Star Trek timeline video that was posted up on StarTrek.com, and it did not include Star Trek Discovery, and I kind of, got upset about that, needless to say, and a few other people got upset at it as well. The Twitter sphere kind of screamed and bitched and moaned about it, and lo and behold, less than 24 hours later, StarTrek.com pulled down that video and posted up a whole new one with a better description, the fact that it was a part one, and they included Star Trek Discovery in there. And I just want to say that I don't normally approach things without thinking through them first or trying to give you guys, the fans, a bit more of a level-headed approach. That video was a bit more of a rant on my part. I even labeled it as a rant because I was very frustrated with what was going on, and I was very upset with what I had been, seen and told based off of this video. And I understand that some of you saw that and were like, oh, you're overreacting. It's not that big of a deal. Well, apparently it was a big deal because it was a big enough deal for them to change it, and I will freely admit, though, that I did overreact a little bit, and I wasn't trying to stir up a rumor. I was merely reporting on and expressing feelings about what it is that they were showing me. It was very clearly in that video, and that was my genuine reaction to it. But I do apologize again for having kind of a harsher, off-the-cuff reaction to that situation. I just wanted to vent a little bit to all of you guys who are fans of the channel and really just the supporters and my support group regarding Star Trek. So I was kind of venting to some of you, and I think the majority of you kind of understood that and kind of were supportive with the fact that I was just basically wigging out. But for some of you that got really upset at me, I'm sorry, but I'm human, and I still have my own kind of issues there. Another thing I do want to quick touch on, and this isn't really super related to the rumor rundown piece, but it is connected back to something that a lot of people have asked me, which is, can I comment on the Anti-Trekker 3 Timelines video? I did watch the video, and honestly, Anti-Trekker did have some really cool ideas in there. The only thing is unfortunately, that's not really what CBS is doing. I think it was smart ideas in there, but especially with this whole fiasco with the current timeline video, now they have a part 1, part 2 situation on StarTrek.com that we kind of uncovered this week. I would say that his ideas were great. They're not going in that direction, but I did see it, and I would say overall, I have watched a few Anti-Trekker videos, and I would say that was the best one. So I'll link his video down in the description. I think everyone should go take a look at it because it's got some really cool ideas. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into the Trek Trivia question of the week. Okay, so the Trek Trivia question from last episode was very simply, how many first contacts were made by the Enterprise crew, the Enterprise, the NX-01 Enterprise with Jonathan Archer? How many first contacts were made? And by my count, and I was as restrictive as I could be. I wasn't trying to get too wild with it. I wasn't including Vulcans and things like that. I was just looking at it from a show's perspective, and I put it down as 33. And the reason I go with 33 is some people would put it closer to 29, but there's a few key ones that I think people sometimes miss, which includes, in my personal opinion, the Organians, the Nakul, and the Sphere Builders. So those are a few that people kind of miss sometimes. I did not include the Borg because I don't count that necessarily as first contact. I counted that because we encountered them in the movie First Contact. But so your number may be one plus or minus 1 or 2. But if you're in the, I would say the 31 to 35 range, I'd say that you were pretty much on the money. So good job to everyone who got that answer there. All right, so the Trek Trivia question for this week is, which species was the first to develop warp drive? The Vulcans, Klingons, Borg, or Visians? Now, this is a multiple choice. This is our first multiple choice, kind of Trek Trivia question. So I'm giving you guys the opportunity to get one of those is the correct answer, and it's going to require a little bit of research, but the answer is out there for sure, I guarantee you. So good luck to everybody out there. All right, let's jump right into the comment of the week. This week's comment comes from user Lawrence Quint, and it says, not a fan of the rather dodgy CGI engine room. I know the Discovery era aesthetic is wildly different than that of the original series, but it'd be nice if they tried to make the engine room at least vaguely similar to how it appeared in the original series instead of doing something 100% different. After all, the Discovery team deserves a major props for how they reimagined the Enterprise bridge in a way that was respectful and consistent with the original series while using the modern aesthetic and technology. Well, Lawrence, I don't know how you pronounce it. I think that's a fair point. I'll say two things on this. One, I like the fact that they make the engine rooms look more like engine rooms in relations to like what a massive starship would have going onto it, not just a giant glowing tube, which I think is something that was a limit of the technology way back in the day, and also the budget, way back in the day. So I like the fact that they are making things look a little bit more engine room-esque, and I do like that aesthetic. I think that it was a good middle ground where the Kelvin films still looked like a weird beer factory to me, whereas the Discovery, which we haven't seen the actual engine room in there, but we've seen like a pseudo engine room there, and then now, of course, the TOS kind of engine room looks and feels a bit more like what I would expect a engine room to look like on a massive starship. The second thing I'll say to that, though, is you are right to say that after all the hard work that the team put in to update the Enterprise, the NCC 1701 Enterprise bridge to a more modern aesthetic, they kind of went way off the reservation in the engine room, and it's not clear as to why. And it's also very obvious that there was no physical set built there. It was all CGI, and it was a little dodgy in some areas, which is probably why they didn't focus on it too much. But it's interesting that they went so far off the reservation when in other areas they tried so hard to keep the aesthetic there. So it is a great point, and I definitely understand your frustrations and rather confusion as to why they went with that kind of design aesthetically. And if we ever get a Pike show or maybe some kind of behind the scenes discussion as to why they did that in these after shows, these after short treks and stuff like that, I hope that we would see like an after show where maybe the director and maybe the producers can talk about why they went with that decision. So hopefully that does come out, because I'm just as curious as you are. But these are good questions. Thank you, Lawrence. All right, that wraps up today's show. We did cover a couple of topics, two of them being the animated kind of stuff going on in Star Trek, and I'm very eager to hear, do you think that Star Trek Prodigy is the name of the Nickelodeon show? And what do you feel about these short Trek animations and really just animation in general kind of coming back into Star Trek? I'm very excited about it, but I can't wait to hear what you guys and gals think about that overall. And is anybody up there going to be, buying their IDW comics? I'm curious to see if anyone's going to be keeping up with that stuff. And how do you feel about it potentially being alpha canon in all regards? It is alpha canon. So I'm curious to hear what all of you guys and gals think about that stuff. Get your comments down below and let's go ahead and get the conversation started. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies!